From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu. Tonight, Vice President Osinbajo blames corruption, lack of accountability and transparency in contract negotiation as factors aiding illicit financial flows in Nigeria. Don't accept destructive gifts, no matter how juicy. The Chief Justice of Nigeria cautions as he swears in 18 new justices of the Court of Appeal in Abuja. House of Representatives begins investigation into revenue leakages amounting to over $30 billion from withheld taxes by companies between 2005 and 2019. And over 150 people still missing as rescue workers continue to search the rubble of an apartment building that collapsed in Miami, Florida 5 days ago. Plus, business, sports, news from Abuja, and later international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Nigeria Deposit Insurance commences payment of liquidation dividends to depositors and other stakeholders in 14 closed banks.
Sports news tonight, Frances Tiafoe secures stunning upset victory over third seed Stefanos Tsitsipas at the Wimbledon Championships on day one.
And from Abuja, the federal government is to procure about 30 million doses of Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine through the AU Commission and Afrexim Bank by September.
The Vice President says corruption, lack of accountability and transparency in contract negotiation process are major factors contributing to illicit financial flows in the country. Professor Yemi Osinbajo made the comments today when he declared open a 2-day capacity building meeting for negotiators organized by the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) in Abuja. At the meeting, which held both physically and virtually, the chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasonye, says politicians also hinder process of negotiation by exercising undue pressures on those charged with the responsibility of handling such tasks. Our correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
Nigeria currently loses over $15 billion annually to illicit financial flows, and this is mostly through poorly negotiated bilateral agreements, tax evasion, among other factors, which is why this workshop is organized to strengthen the capacity of negotiators for improved terms of engagement with the rest of the world.
One of the most important things in undertaking negotiations is preparation. That preparation, of course, means assembling a strong team. In the context of Nigeria, that means please call an interministerial meeting.
Nigeria developed guidelines for the negotiations and drafting of agreements as far back as 1989. But 32 years down the line, it appears the document no longer holds sway.
Sometimes political leaders who are not versed in the subject matter, they are the disruptors of, they are the hindrance to the conclusion of very good agreements.
The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, who joins virtually to declare the meeting open, is concerned about the ineptitude of negotiators in bilateral agreements and contracts, which he says has cost Nigeria huge financial loss.
There is no question at all that corruption plays a very huge role, which is why monitoring is important, which is why accountability is important. And those who draft contracts that eventually turn out in this way ought to be held to account. There is a lack of transparency and due process involved, where commercial contracts go bad, that is. And this ranges from not advertising or opening up opportunities to other potential investors, or not subjecting agreements to established legislative and treaty ratification processes.
On the ongoing discussion on climate change, the Vice President says Nigeria's interest must be considered.
The most important issue for us is that there must be a just transition from fossil fuels to any type of clean energy. That just transition means that we must continue to use our gas. These countries cannot defund gas projects, while expecting us to and expect us to cooperate or to be a part of these agreements. We cannot, because this is existential for us.
With this capacity building workshop, ICPC is optimistic that the challenge of illicit financial flows, which has seen Nigeria lose huge amount of money, will be curbed, as negotiators would be well equipped with the right skills. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Joint Committee on Finance, Banking and Currency is querying Nigerian banks on alleged complicity in non-collection of taxes from companies in excess of $30 billion between 2005 and 2019. The chairman of the House Committee on Finance, James Faleke, made this point during an investigative hearing on alleged annual revenue leakages arising from payments on account of foreign currency denominated contract by companies, as well as foreign exchange allocation to companies. The lawmakers are questioning why the skyrocketing amounts of foreign direct investment and capital importations are not being reflected in the economic progress of the country.
The committee deemed it imperative to investigate revenue leakages and loopholes in the system that have contributed to a loss of over $30 billion in annual federation tax revenue between 2004 and 2019. The committee has noted the following major infractions which have multiplier effects on our infractions. Liftings of some crude oil and gas by oil exploration companies that were not wholly or unlegally allocated to the consignors in JV, PSC, and PSC exploration activities, inflow of foreign investments in the form of equity, foreign cash loans, equipment loans, whose utilizations are majorly subject to tax, end up in transactions, foreign transfer that were at variance with the purpose of such inflows. Overnight and fictitious disappearance of naira proceeds of foreign inflows from the bank accounts of Nigerian beneficiaries and subsequent allocations of foreign exchange by CBN for capital repatriation, principal loan repayments, and interest payments.
The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, is appealing to the 18 newly sworn-in justices of the Court of Appeal to avoid accepting juicy but destructive gifts while discharging their judicial functions. Justice Muhammad explains that such can land the judges in trouble. He also reminded them to keep their heads above murky waters as their reputation matters in their rise to honor and fame.
Members of the bar and bench, families of the new justices of the Court of Appeal at the swearing-in ceremony in Abuja. The Chief Justice of Nigeria and other justices of the Supreme Court arrive and immediately begin administering the oath of office on the new justices. Shortly after, he gives the new justices some advice, urging them to give good account of themselves.
You must, against all odds, conduct your affairs within the ambit of the law and the oath that has just been administered on you. If you are hitherto 50% under public scrutiny, I assure you now that it has risen to 100% by virtue of this elevation to the Court of Appeal. All eyes are on you.
Others at the event believe that more justices should be appointed to expedite delivery of justice and a better judiciary.
This is a good thing to see, but I personally believe that we need more justices in all the courts, in all the appellate courts, the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court even, and also more judges at all the high courts across this country. The judiciary is the cornerstone, is the backbone of our democracy. And we are aware of the challenges they are facing, including the challenge of manpower, of remuneration, of computerization, etc., etc. But this is a right step, and I believe at the end of the reforms, constitutional reforms, which will encompass judicial justice sector reforms, I believe that we'll have a better judiciary.
I think they must keep to the tenet and the conduct and ethics of that profession. Be very mindful that it's an opportunity given by God to decide the fate of human beings. So whatever you do, you look at how God will judge you.
The last swearing in of justices into the Court of Appeal was in 2012, and to many, the swearing in of these justices comes at a time when several litigations are on the waiting list.
Well, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has kicked off the continuous voter registration exercise with a newly introduced online voter registration process. The Commission opened the two portals for the online exercise early this morning and has reported thousands of registrants have registered within the first few hours of opening the portals. The process shows that there is a lot of interest from Nigerians living outside the country. A lot of those who have accessed the portals outside Nigeria, registrants from the United States top the trend, followed by Nigerians living in the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and France. The exercise will enable new registrants enroll and old voters review, change, or adjust their details as they wish online. The online registration runs till July the 19th, when the Commission will commence the scheduled appointments at the state and local government centres. Also politics, defect to the All Progressives Congress and lose your seat. Well, that's the warning of the leadership of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in Zamfara State to Governor Bello Matawalle over his purported plan to join the ruling APC, with a note of caution that it will challenge the action in court. The National Publicity Secretary of the PDP, Mr. Kola Ologbodiyo, told journalists that the APC never participated in the 2019 governorship election in the state. The PDP has also dissolved the party's executive in Zamfara State.
The People's Democratic Party is watching developments in Zamfara State as this concern reports of plans by the state governor, Bello Matawalle, to cross over to the All Progressives Congress. The PDP categorically cautions the Zamfara State Governor, Bello Matawalle, to know that his plans amount to a decision to vacate office, as no law allows him to cross over to any other party with a governorship mandate statutorily given to the PDP through the ballot box, as already established by the provision of the 1999 Constitution as amended and the standing judgment of the Supreme Court. The PDP also cautions members of the National Assembly as well as members of the Zamfara State House of Assembly not to allow themselves to be pushed into losing their seats, as the provisions of the Constitution is very clear in barring lawmakers from cross-carpeting except in a situation of a division in the political party upon which platform they were elected. Meanwhile, the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party has approved the dissolution of Zamfara State Executive of the party. The decision is in line with the provisions of Section 29, subsection 2B of the PDP Constitution 2017 as amended.
Meanwhile, some stakeholders in the Zamfara State chapter of the All Progressives Congress have also held a meeting in Kaduna State where they discussed the purported plan by Governor Bello Matawalle to defect to the party. The meeting had in attendance two former governors of Zamfara State, Abdulaziz Yari and Mahmoud Shinkafi, as well as former senators and ministers, including the state APC chairman, Lawal Liman. After the meeting, former Governor Abdulaziz Yari, who is also the state APC leader, said after much deliberation, they have decided to welcome Governor Bello Matawalle into the party, despite their initial resistance.
As a party, we need people to join the party, and the people that will add value. It's a belief that coming to the government and the party, it will add value. That's where we are. And why we have this decision today to meet here is to make a consultation and inform our people about the decision of our party leadership in Abuja on accepting him to be in our party. Some of our people whom I'm representing, they are against him joining because he did not demonstrate oneness of his nature and as a leader. But in whatever circumstances we find ourselves, we have to go along with it. It's a good thing that governor is coming, because we know we may think, or other people may think, that there's added value to where we are. So in a nutshell, I welcome the Matole to APC, and I hope it will be an excellent development for Zamfara APC.
In part two, after the break, TED Fund to take over National Library projects after years of neglect due to inadequate funding. Stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Vice President Osinbajo blames corruption, lack of accountability and transparency in contract negotiations as factors aiding illicit financial flows in Nigeria. Don't accept destructive gifts, no matter how juicy. The Chief Justice of Nigeria cautions as he swears in 18 new justices of the Court of Appeal in Abuja. House of Representatives begins investigation into revenue leakages amounting to over $30 billion from withheld taxes by companies between 2005 and 2019. And over 150 people still missing as rescue workers continue to search the rubble of an apartment building that collapsed in Miami, Florida 5 days ago. The federal government has approved the takeover of the financing of the National Library project by the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TEDFund, with over 50 billion naira needed to complete the project. The Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Sonny Echono, says the critical step being taken by government is to reposition library services in the Nigerian education sector for effective service delivery. He recalled that work on the National Library has been stalled for years due to inadequate funding, adding that efforts to get the private sector to complete the project have not yielded results. He made the comments when the Nigerian Library Association President, Professor Innocent Ekoga, paid a working visit to the ministry. And a fire outbreak that started in the early hours of the day has razed a store that contains hospital beds and other items at the Yola Specialist Hospital in Yola, the Adamawa state capital. Eyewitnesses say they noticed smoke from the direction of the hospital and quickly rushed to the area, only to discover that the building was already ablaze. All efforts to save the building by the firefighters was unsuccessful, as nothing could be salvaged from the building. According to the chief medical director of the hospital, the extent of damage has not been ascertained, but he appeals to the state government to make available fire trucks in the hospital to prevent reoccurrence. And for more on the news at 10, let's cross over to our Abuja studio where Maokwe Ogu Yusuf is standing by. Well, it's good to see you again, Maokwe.
Definitely good to see you too, Kayode. The federal government has concluded plans The federal government has concluded plans to procure 29.8 million doses of Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine by September 2021. The executive director of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shoaib, made this known during the weekly briefing of the Presidential Steering Committee today. According to him, the vaccine, which is in addition to the over 3.92 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccine expected to be delivered by July and August this year, will be procured through the African Union Commission and Afrexim Bank. Meanwhile, the federal government has added passengers from South Africa to the list of countries restricted for travelers owing to the surge in the country's COVID-19 cases. South Africa recorded over 100,000 cases in the last 1 week, while 20,000 was recorded in the last 24 hours.
The federal government has also recently received communication from COVAX facility for additional allocation of 3,924,000 doses of AstraZeneca vaccines, which according to the supply forecast will be available for delivery into the country by late July or early August 2021. Similarly, the government is procuring a total of 29,850,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines through the African Union Commission and the Afrexim arrangement. This is expected by September 2021. Nigeria continues to have the highest vaccination rates in Africa, with approximately 87,000 people being vaccinated every day. Egypt, South Africa, Ghana, and Senegal each have a daily vaccination rate of 72,000, 52,600, 12,100, and 4,790, respectively.
In other stories now, a protest by students of the College of Education Gidanwaya in Jama'a local government area of Kaduna State has resulted in the death of one of them who was shot during the protest. The students were said to have embarked on the protest over the tuition increase by the management of the institution. Eyewitnesses say the slain student had joined his colleagues in the protest when security operatives stormed to the scene, apparently to disperse the protesters. 2 other students were also shot but are currently receiving treatment at a hospital. Police authorities in the state say the protesters blocked the convoy of a military sector commander, injuring him and one other person. The situation resulted in a fracas where 3 of the protesters were injured. Meanwhile, the Kaduna State government says it's awaiting full reports on the protest and also denied deploying security operatives against them. While staying with schools, the Edo State government marked the 3rd anniversary of the state basic education sector transformation, Edo Best, today. It's aimed at changing the negative narrative among youths whose drive is to travel out of the country. Answering questions from students, Governor Obaseki explains that the basic education transformation project of his administration is focusing on giving a solid foundation to primary and secondary school students preparing for higher education.
3 years of impacting children is what's been celebrated here in this hall in Benin City, the Edo State capital, as stakeholders look into the Edo basic education sector transformation, Edo Best effectiveness since its launch in April 2018. The children have their say.
There are also other questions that my co-learners in the panel would like to ask you.
A radical shift in classroom culture, including the training of over 11,000 teachers and school heads in modern child-centered teaching techniques, 91% teacher attendance and 81% lesson completion, creation of 7,000 virtual classrooms during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown are only some of the results reportedly recorded within the period.
Our pupils in our Edo Best schools are learning more than they were before. They are learning in 1 term what it would have taken 3 years to do. It's happening because our teachers are now coming to school. When they come to school, they are teaching. When they teach, the kids are learning. Every person here, our God.
There are indications these results are recognized even outside the state in Nigeria.
Second, the understanding that technology on its own is critical but not enough. It is about combining technology with the human factor. In Edo, for example, the deployment of tablets with scripted lessons has been accompanied with a lot of support for teachers through practical teachers training and the presence of quality assurance officers.
A bigger package is planned for the future. Innovative teaching, learning for skills and values are included in Edo Best 2.0, which is unveiled at the event.
as they assist the governor to unveil Edo Best 2.0.
You're the heartbeat of Nigeria.
Our kids are now learning better. They're about 70% of their colleagues in Europe and Asia. So their learning outcomes we're seeing is 70% of where their colleagues, colleagues are globally. They are far from where their colleagues in Nigeria are, but that's not the standard.
The state government also acknowledges the role of teachers and their unions in attaining success in the past and seeks their support for the great work ahead.
When the news at 10 returns, NDIC to begin payment of liquidation dividends to uninsured depositors, creditors and shareholders of 14 liquidated banks. That's in business news. Do join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. A total of 57.3 million Nigerians have been captured in an ongoing national identity number registration. 0.2% of the figure are children under the age of 5. This is according to the Director General of the National Identity Management Commission, Engineer Edo State, who was speaking at a review meeting of the National Population Commission. Mr. Aziz explains that a secure foundational identity system is important to the national economic development.
As of today, NIMSI enrolls 57.3 million citizens. But out of that, children below the age of 5 is only very, very negligible, maybe 0.2% of that. Why? Because they are found in the hospital or at home. And the same thing with the elderly people that are 60 and above also. They are always found either at home or in the hospital. Therefore, we have to have a system that have this civil registration and vital statistics for all the events in the life cycle of a citizen.
The objective of the digitization and automation of the CRVS system in Nigeria is to enable data end users have access to real-time data and also to meet up with international best practices in CRVS system.
And River State Governor Nyesom Wike is urging the people of the state to demand a dividend of democracy from opposition politicians in the state, especially from members of the All Progressives Congress. Governor Wike said this during the flag-off of the construction of a road in Emoha, local government area of the state, performed by the former governor of Benue State, Senator Gabriel Suswam. He also challenged APC members in River State to show completed projects to their credit in the state, saying the PDP remains the party to beat.
Road infrastructure remains an essential factor in the development of rural communities. Ngwetawa in Emoha local government area of River State is one of such communities with a robust economic potential but limited by good access roads. However, things are about to change for the better as the state government is flagging off the construction of this major road.
Your Excellency, this is a clear testimony that everybody in your political family counts. Everybody counts. Be it a plebeian, be it a hoi polloi, no matter the status. It is for that reason that we are here gathered today.
Adorned in Tiv traditional attire, an elated Governor Wike probes the interest of politicians and challenges them to always prioritize the needs of the people.
I came from a community where nobody thought anything would come out of. But today I'm a governor. And I told my people, God has blessed us and we must move on. And other people will jealous us. That's the essence of politics. Some people claim I'm close to a governor for 8 years. I'm close to the federal government for how many years? I was a member of House of Representatives for how many years? I was a senator for how many years? At the end of the day, what we ask, I was this, I was that, I am this. What is the impact on my community?
Meanwhile, the special guest and former governor of Edo State says Wike is not failing on his social contracts with the people.
As a former governor, I know exactly the impact that road infrastructure have on communities or the people in those communities. You make promise. When we were elected and was sworn, we will swear to protect lives and properties and provide the welfare to the people.
The road, when completed, will improve the general outlook of the community and is projected to last for between 30 to 50 years.
Well, that's all from Abuja. But the NDIC is to begin payment of liquidation dividends to uninsured depositors, creditors, and shareholders. Teniola Shobowale has details on Business News.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Malpe. The Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation says it plans to commence payment of liquidation dividends to uninsured depositors, creditors, and shareholders of 14 banks. The affected banks include City Express Bank, All States Trust Bank, Allied Bank, Commerce Bank, North-South Bank, Cooperative and Commerce Bank, and Nigeria Merchant Bank. Others are Hilltop Microfinance Bank, Olomoyoyo, Ivo Ngwegwe, Bekwara, Agungun, and Idet Microfinance Bank. A statement from the NDIC says stakeholders of 8 of the 14 closed banks will receive their first round of liquidation dividend payment, while the other 6 banks are to be paid additional sums due to them. Total credit to Nigeria's economy rose by 880.65 billion naira to 43.44 trillion naira in the first quarter of this year, and that's according to latest report from the central bank. The amount represents about 89 billion naira increase from the 42.55 trillion naira recorded at the end of December last year. A breakdown of the data shows that credit allocated to the private sector rose by 1.29 trillion naira to 31.44 trillion naira at the end of March this year, in contrast to 30.15 trillion naira recorded within the last quarter of 2020. On the other hand, credit allocated to government declined by 410.62 billion naira to 11.99 trillion naira, down from the 12.4 trillion naira previously recorded. The federal government plans to widen its tax bracket by collecting taxes from foreign tech companies with operations in Nigeria. According to a statement by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo, many global tech giants with significant economic presence are currently not paying taxes. The Vice President further explains that the federal government will not immediately raise tax rates. However, it has been empowered by the Finance Act of 2019 to widen the tax net. Let's check in on the stock market now. The Nigeria's equities market opened the week on a sour note as last-minute sell-offs in Airtel Africa's shares and 17 other stocks dragged the all-share index further below the 38,000 level. Well, Layo Adegoke tells us more.
Thank you for joining us for the Stock Markets Report. More than 34 billion naira is lost to a fresh round of profit-taking by investors in the local equities market as it enters the final trading week of June with a hangover of negative sentiments which dominated 4 sessions last week. Well, it appears the optimism of rebound in the market's overall performance is gradually fading after its main indicator, the all-share index, moved further away from the 38,000 points, down by 0.19% today. Now, the loss is attributed to 18 equities, which emerged particularly from the banking as well as the oil and gas sector of equities listed. At the same time, the market's total turnover also closes negative as volume moved down by 19.34% as against the 21.09% uptick recorded in Friday's session. Meanwhile, Ikeja Hotel is number one on a list of 13 gainers. BOC Gases leads 17 other losers, while the trio of FBN Holdings, UBA and GT are the top most actively traded stocks for the day. That's it on the stock markets report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
Thanks a lot, Layo. Meanwhile, U.S. stocks began the week with mixed sentiments amid a broad strength in tech stocks and mild profit taken on industrial equities. But let's find out. Ashibowale, it's back to Kayode for the rest of the news at 10.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Well, thank you, Tenny. Still ahead on the news at 10. Over 150 people still missing as rescue workers continue to search the rubble of a building that collapsed in Miami, Florida 5 days ago. Plus, other international news from our studio in London. Viewers at the scene of the collapsed apartment building in Miami, Florida are still hoping to find miracle survivors in void underneath the rubble. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Chief Andy Alvarez says frantic efforts are underway to reach any air pockets where people could have survived. 10 people have died so far. Well, here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Sweden's Prime Minister has resigned after 7 years in power, having lost a vote of confidence last week over a controversial plan to ease rent controls for new build apartments. Stefan Löfven's resignation means the Parliament Speaker is now tasked with finding a new premier. Löfven is the first Swedish leader ever to lose a confidence vote in the parliament after the Left Party withdrew its support for his centre-left government over its housing market plans. Marine Le Pen's far-right party has suffered a serious electoral blow when it failed to win a regional election in its stronghold in the south of France. The National Rally hoped Provence would be its first regional victory, but it was won by centre-right Republicans. Ms. Le Pen sought to win one of France's mainland regions for the first time in a bid to boost her presidential election hopes in 2022. She accused rivals of forming unnatural alliances to block her and her party from power. Australian leaders have held an emergency meeting after a spike in COVID infections.
So have to be prepared for the numbers to go up considerably.
An outbreak in Sydney linked to the highly contagious Delta variant has grown to 128 cases. Cases have also been recorded in the Northern Territory, Queensland and Western Australia. Officials say it is a critical time for the country, which has kept case numbers low with border closures and lockdowns. The escalation in COVID infections has prompted lockdowns in the cities of Sydney and Darwin, as well as restrictions across 4 states. Hong Kong police have arrested a former senior Apple Daily journalist at the airport while he was attempting to leave the city. The journalist is the 7th staff member of the now closed pro-democracy newspaper to be detained after police accused them and the paper of foreign collusion under the national security law. The Apple Daily was forced to print its final edition and cease operations on Thursday after the company's assets were frozen. Trading on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange is finally underway in the afternoon after its morning session was cancelled due to extreme weather. The decision to open the market came after the government cancelled an earlier black rainstorm warning. The city has 3 levels of warning, with black being the highest after amber and red. Landslides and flooding were reported in some parts of Hong Kong as it was hit with high amounts of rainfall. Canada has recorded its highest ever temperature as the country's west and the US Pacific Northwest endure an unprecedented heat wave. British Columbia soared to 46.6 Celsius, breaking an 84-year-old record. A heat dome of high pressure parked over the region has set new records in many other areas. The US and Canada have both warned citizens of dangerous heat levels that could persist this week. The high pressure zone is enormous as it goes from California right up to Canada's Arctic territories and stretches inland through Idaho. People in the Democratic Republic of the Congo's city of Beni have woken up to a curfew on Monday after 3 bombs rocked the east of the country. On Sunday morning, a makeshift bomb went off in a Catholic church in the city, injuring 2 women, followed just hours later by a suicide bombing outside a bar. Although it's not yet known who was behind the blasts, a rebel group called the Allied Defense Forces carries out frequent attacks in the region and has targeted churches before. And finally, Russian ornithologists are employing an unusual method to deter poaching of rare falcons: tattoos. At the Altay hatchery on the border of Mongolia, ornithologists are tattooing the word SOS at the base of falcons' beaks. They say that bird catchers can easily take the identification rings off and make falcons saleable again, and no one will know that the birds come from the hatchery, but the tattoo will be an additional protection. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Spain have reached the quarterfinals of Euro 2020 in dramatic fashion by beating Croatia in extra time after an 8-goal thriller. Luis Enrique's side will now face Switzerland in the last 8. France and Switzerland battled to a 3-3 draw after extra time, and the outcome of the round of 16 game had to be decided by penalties. In the end, Switzerland eventually won the game by 5-4 by penalty kicks. Gareth Southgate says England's Euro 2020 last 16 tie with Germany is an opportunity for his team to make history. Southgate hopes to guide England into the quarterfinals after reaching the last 4 of the World Cup in 2018. He says he's keen for his players to write a new chapter into the England-Germany rivalry, with several of them too young to remember some previous key meetings. American tennis star Frances Tiafoe dumped third seed Stefanos Tsitsipas out of the Wimbledon men's singles 6-4, 6-4, 6-3 as the Greek became the first big casualty on day 1 of the tournament. Tiafoe, who is ranked 57th in the world, produced a masterclass in just over 2 hours to win the encounter, as Tsitsipas struggled against a confident and aggressive opponent in front of 6,000 fans on covered court 1. Our defending champion Novak Djokovic overcame an early fright to fend off British teenager Jack Draper and launch his quest for a 6th title as Wimbledon returned after a 2-year absence. Djokovic has never lost a Grand Slam match to a player ranked as low as world number 253. He looked a little stunned as he struggled to find his footing on the greasy turf and contain the fearless hitting of the Briton. The Serbian later found his rhythm and quickly snuffed out the danger, ending Draper's hopes of an upset with a 4-6, 6-1, 6-2, 6-2 victory.
Game 7 match, Djokovic, 4-6, 6-1, 6-2, 6-2.
That sports news is back to you, Kaidi.
Well, thanks, Ayo. And the main news again. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, today blamed corruption, lack of accountability and transparency in contract negotiation as factors aiding illicit financial flows in Nigeria. Also today, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Tanko Mohammed, swore in 18 new justices of the Court of Appeal in Abuja and asked them not to accept destructive gifts, no matter how juicy. That's the news at 10. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Good night.